There we go. Finally started. Okay, welcome to the KCP community call on this lovely Thursday. Before we get started, as you can see, this call is being recorded, and also this call and all the other community avenues of KCP are governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which boils down to be excellent to each other. I think that's something that we can definitely achieve. So, I don't see anyone who's a new face to me. I'll just ask the question anyway. Is there anyone who wants to introduce or reintroduce themselves? Yeah, I think that's a no. Let me quickly bring the agenda up so that we have something visual to follow along. But with that being said, if there is no one who wants to introduce themselves, we will head over to the topics.
Marvin, I just joined. I can introduce myself quickly. I'm Cody McCain, and I am with JP Morgan Chase. And I actually met earlier today with Marvin, just getting introduced to the project, but very interested in utilizing KCP for several control plane projects that we have going on.
Thank you so much, Cody. Welcome. We're very glad to have you. All right. I think with that, we can head into the agenda, into our topics. And there's one topic on the agenda, two topics actually, but your first topic, Christoph, is improving installing tools. Do you want to talk about this a bit?
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I opened this pull request a while ago. The reason is that I got slightly annoyed that every time I had to lint something in KCP, I had to download and recompile Golang CI lint. I was also annoyed that we have to do it in CI every single time. And so I thought it's a better idea to just download ready-made binaries. I think there's a reason why software projects publish binaries, right? They are meant to be used. It's weird to me that we are mixing our dependencies with like upstream dependencies and into weird Go mod hacks. And so I've added this PR. That is a very small shell script that can download binaries, extract them if needed, rename them if needed, and updated our makefile to use this script. And then a long discussion started that derailed a tiny bit, I think, where we discussed whether other tools like Gobin or whatnot are maybe a better solution. And to be honest, I kind of slightly gave up on this, even though I would still like to have it. We have it in some other KCP projects, like the sync agent. I think the KCP operator also used the same script to great effect. And I was hoping that maybe here in the meeting, I can get some consensus on if we want this or if we just are happy with Go, get, Go, installing, Go, recompiling everything all the time. This isn't even to mention that Golang CI lint explicitly recommends to not do that. So that's another argument in my favor, I would say. So does anyone have opinions about this by accident? Hilo.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think the PR can be merged. The discussion that happened in the PR was mostly out of interest around the Bingo project. But I think we only have two options realistically. One is to use GoTool, and the other is to have the script that downloads the binaries. The problem with GoTool is, of course, mixing the dependencies. And even in smaller projects, I've already had problems where this mixing of dependencies generates problems. So I don't think that's a good idea. Not to mention, you've already put it also in the description, in the summary, we already have this script in use in other repositories. So at the very latest, when we were to move to the monorepo, we would encounter this question and then likely go with the script. So I think we can just merge the PR and we are done with it.
I think we only use the script in repositories that are not going to be part of the monorepo. Like the sync agent and operator
Okay.
are moved into the monorepo, I think. Yeah. Simon.
Plus one for me. One thing, let's please standardize on the tools directory thingy. That's the same in the operator and in KCP. That's the only teeny tiny nit that I have. And I don't care which directory it is. I just the same in both.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, nice. Then I will update the PR, rebase it. It's pretty old now. Yeah. And
I
then
have
hopefully-
just
Oh.
I have one question or one
Please.
concern or request for this. I haven't looked at this, so maybe it's already in here. But is there any chance we could do optional checks of checksums?
Not
Um,
yet, but it should be trivial to add this so that you would add a checksum.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think I would much prefer that to ensure, like, to be honest, I think all of these tools, their binary downloads are very attractive targets for, yeah, I guess for
Supply chain attacks.
attackers, for supply chain attacks. So I think it would be great if we pinned the checksum so that if it gets poisoned, we don't download it.
Can do.
Okay.
Cool. If no one else has anything for this, then we can quickly move on to my other topic. That is also just trying to get some feedback. And that is, Margaret, I just continue, right? And you
Yep, sure.
Yeah. So I made a tiny PR because of my performance tests. It was kind of annoying to get the number of currently existing logical clusters. So I thought maybe we should begin adding some more useful metrics to KCP. And the first interesting thing to me was just to get an overview over the cluster index. The cluster index is that part in the front proxy that gathers all the workspace paths and chart information and workspace mounts and soon workspace types to make informed decisions where to route each incoming request. And I thought it might be interesting to see how many workspaces does the front proxy currently know about. So I added this simple metric. And I was just wondering, do we already have some feelings regarding metric names? I thought about, as Marvin suggested, introducing the subsystem front proxy in this, but I then realized that this metric is also produced on every single chart because each chart also has an index running. So the name front proxy didn't really make sense to me. And does someone have strong feelings or good practices regarding like metric names, something like I was looking for some baseline that we can use for also future metrics. So we have some general guideline. Yeah. Any metrics people in here who have opinions on this? It's a sexy topic, I know.
No one with strong opinions on metrics?
Okay, then we can continue this on the PR.
Yeah, okay. One thing that I was wondering, I think you probably should have accounts. Isn't that something that you usually do with metrics names that they
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
kind of,
could
if
be.
are there some or count or this kind of stuff?
I would have to recheck. I know that units should be
Yeah.
on there,
Yeah.
but does count for gauge matrix? I'm not sure, but I can check. Sure.
I think it's only the unit, but it's like underscore total is also a unit. So it's units, but really
But if
think.
I see a metric that ends in count or total, I would think, oh, this is a summary or a histogram. I don't know.
I for sure think it's not count, because count is like also a reserved word, at least in PromQL. As far as I know, that's like not part of the recommendation. I think it's like underscore total or something, like to indicate that it is a metric at that time, so that you could use rate or whatever on it.
Yeah, I have to check.
There's no strong feelings from my side. Unless we think it will overlap with something, but my understanding is it will not overlap. It already will exist for every chart anyway. So
I think the main part to consider is that we want to like obviously stay consistent with the ecosystem, like with metric naming best practices. So I guess you could also check what the Cube API server metrics look like that we already expose, and just adjust with follow that essentially.
Okay. Coolio. Then I yield my time. That's what they say.
Okay, just cool. So I added a few topics. They are not that long, so we might let's see. So the first thing that I just wanted to bring up here, it's been on the Slack channel. I've sent out an email. Everyone is probably aware of this, but I just wanted to briefly say/discuss that KCP 0.28 is out. It's released this Monday. That brings us to Kubernetes 1.32. I don't quite remember who did the rebase. I think it was you, Robert, right? It's been a while.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. We really need to print those I Survived the Rebase t-shirts. I would really like to bring them to the next KubeCon or so. And also Nilo is already working on the 1.33 rebase. So we'll get that into the 0.29 release cycle pretty early. So that's pretty nice. Mainly for the KCP 0.28 release, just a brief heads up, both API bindings and API exports are available in new versions. So you want to use those because they bring more features like verb support and permission claims, and they change the API spec a fair bit. We do have our documentation updated, so the tenancy quick start guide and the exporting API page will give v1 alpha 2 examples, so you're up to date with that. This basically kicks off the 0.29 release cycle. And maybe briefly talking about that, should we talk about the monorepo already? Marco, Robert, is there something to talk about, or is it something that will kick off in the next few weeks?
I don't have anything to talk about aside that we'll kick it off in the next few weeks. We agreed that we will first ship the base for 1.33, if I'm not mistaken, because it is mainly done as far as I have understood, or to some degree it's already done. So we will let it completely finish, and when that is finished, then we can figure out and get started with this.
All right. Thank you very much. Then I just have a quick question. Multi-cluster provider versioning. So this is something that I wanted to briefly discuss. So we have, as most, I guess, are aware, so multi-cluster runtime is the Kubernetes upstream effort to build an add-on on top of controller runtime to be able to reconcile against multiple clusters. We started that with KCP in mind, but the provider interface is pluggable. And we obviously have KCP-specific providers in this repository that's under like KCP dev multi-cluster provider. So now the question that I wanted to ask, so right now we have a 0.1 release out for this provider thing. But it doesn't sound very useful to me to have a separate versioning scheme here. So the question is, should this be following one of the two things that it depends on? And I'm saying two things because we could either version it by KCP. So the next multi-cluster provider version would be 0.28, like to support the just freshly minted KCP release. It could obviously also follow the multi-cluster runtime release scheme. So we would cut a 0.21 multi-cluster provider version. Or we keep it in completely independent versioning scheme, but that seems to be a bit of overkill and would probably confuse people if they had to like look up, okay, is this now the version that I'm looking for? Problem is, I'm basically looking now for inputs. Should it follow KCP? Should it follow multi-cluster runtime? Or should it be independent?
Which of the two sides is driving the changes necessary in our provider? Is it every time we do a new KCP version we have to do some work? Or is it every time the multi-cluster thingy gets updated we have to do some work?
That's a pretty good question. For the 0.28 release, we do need to make some changes because we brought in the new API versions for export and binding. So in that particular case, it would depend on the KCP version. Multi-cluster runtime is probably not going to change as much because it has the provider interface defined. Simon, you have an opinion?
Multi-cluster runtime follows controller runtime.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, given that, I think we could work with the idea to just make it follow KCP, because assuming like if we go the whole chain, basically controller runtime does not directly follow but has compatibility with upstream Kubernetes, right? So if upstream Kubernetes changes, controller runtime changes, they get a new version, which then also requires us to change KCP version, to make a new KCP release, which would then in turn trigger multi-cluster runtime controller runtime to follow that.
Wait, was that an argument for following KCP or against it?
It is for following, because it's basically, if we go down the whole chain, KCP will, well, because KCP, I think, yes, it moves partially independent, but it also will move with Kubernetes releases, right? Like when we do the big rebase, it does follow it, or it's impacted by it to a certain degree. And I would say, I would tie this one to KCP, and it's just tied to the whole chain, is my first gut feeling on it.
My gut feeling is that there are more breaking changes in controller runtime with new releases. Good breaking changes. I'm not trying to bash the project. Great breaking changes. But if we version with KCP, then if there's a new controller runtime version with breaking changes, then someone updating to the new controller runtime version couldn't use the provider anymore because it's still tied to the KCP version. Potentially. Whereas on the KCP side, how much change do we expect, right? We're talking with one or two endpoints of KCP that are probably stable, like listing logical clusters or whatever we're doing with KCP. I wouldn't expect so many changes on that side. I would rather expect us having to kind of follow controller runtime semantics where the API is changed more, Simon.
But I would argue in the case that it gets updated and controller runtime is not compatible anymore, then controller runtime would also not be compatible with that old version or that current latest version, but that old version of KCP.
What? No, why?
No,
You change how your reconciler functions call something, that is great. You can do that in your project. But if our provider library doesn't do it, if it's not using generics or whatever, you can't update controller runtime anymore. And we can't release a new version of the multi-cluster thingy because we tied it to KCP. I think we should leave it independent for now. I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to tie it to something. I think this, yeah, I don't know.
But would we then have like a table that shows what it is compatible with?
My heart says that shouldn't be necessary. It's all stable APIs on both sides. This will soon settle down and everything will be peachy and sunshine and rainbows. Really, I think there won't be that many breaking changes on both sides that we need a full table matrix to specify this. All fingers crossed.
I think primarily a table would be useful to look up what you need. Like in the sense of, okay, I know that I'm running KCP 0.27 because I didn't upgrade to 0.28 yet. Eventually, I guess we'll also move to like more stable versions. And you could in that table basically check, okay, like which provider version can I or should I use? But yeah, we can keep it independent. I thought it might be less confusing if we version it after one of the major dependencies, but I see that with two major dependencies in the mix, we have potentially a problem. So we just release and we make it clear this version supports KCP 0.28 and multi-cluster runtime 0.21. That's it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. Oh, I think we have we have someone raising hand. Perfect.
Gitika, do you want to?
Hi, I'm sorry for joining it late. I have a small observation here. So, as an enterprise, we see there are a lot of, so when enterprises try to adopt such a product like KCP, they already create a lot of versions. So having multiple version in this product itself would make it more complex for enterprises to adopt. If in case, this is my opinion, which of so far working with enterprises so far. So I think maybe keeping very similar versions would be much better than having multiple versions for different components here. Not sure how to take it, but yeah. Usually with enterprises, already they have. So I come from VMware. We had a Tanzu product, and we were already dealing with a lot of Kubernetes components, right? And then a lot of the other services. So managing, they themselves, the components themselves have their own versions. And at the same time, Tanzu had their own version. So, if some enterprise in future, some enterprise tries to adopt KCP, they'll have their own versions also, making version mapping a very complex process, which is also very complex right now in release processes. So, I would, highly suggest to find out a way where we can, have as limited versions as we can have. Just an opinion.
I think that mirrors basically why I brought this topic up in the first place. But Christoph, you want to say something?
Counterpoint. What if there isn't a version you can choose? If you suddenly realize that because of the versioning scheme that we are using, we can't ship a provider a multi-cluster runtime thingy that is compatible with two competing versions. Suddenly you're stuck and you only have one choice. If we have a free versioning system, we can make updates. We can say, oh yeah, we update the new KCP version, just a new patch release, done. If we tie ourselves to one specific thing, suddenly we have to say, okay, version 28 of the provider is compatible with KCP 28 and multi-cluster runtime this. And then each patch release changes the compatibility with the other side. Or is patch release then also, do we also have to follow patch releases? Long story short, if we have an independent versioning system, at least we have an option to make something available that fits into a complex dependency web. So, yeah. I think we should leave the option and see over time if we really align with one or the other, and then we see, do we always release in lockstep? Okay, then we adjust the version. It's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think so. I think at the moment we just need the flexibility because we're a bit unsure what ties together with what necessarily, and only time will tell. But I do think that at least we should have like some sort of recommendation, at least to say, hey, this version with this version. Can also be like a plus version. We can say the latest version works with multi-cluster runtime 20 plus or something like this. Also, I'm also fine with like we don't need to pack every crazy combination or something, but I would think it makes sense because at the end, like people, I think there's nothing more frustrating for a person starting with this and then just because they pick the wrong dependency, but potentially even the IDE selects the version of the dependency, you know, when they just go mod tidy block and then they just get whatever mod tidy finds. And then they run into something that doesn't work for the reason that the two versions are incompatible. That's like really frustrating. That's like the only thing I think we should make sure to avoid because we're looking to attract early adopters and they might really be turned off by that because then, you know, they build something, it's not their fault that it doesn't work. They didn't know about it.
Okay, crazy idea. And then I will and finally be quiet. We just version based on both. The version number of the multi-cluster runtime is KCP version dot multi-cluster provider version dot patch release.
And we release all the time.
No, every time you need to adjust one version, you can just
Yes, we release all the time.
I think you're gonna break Zenware with that too.
I'm not even sure, actually. Both are monotonic increasing versions or numbers. You have a patch release at the end.
Yeah, but at least the what do you do if like one of them has a breaking change? If the one that you're using for the patch release has a breaking change, then suddenly like any Zenware guarantees go out of the window.
Patch breaking change in the patch release. You can only do that. Anyway, with that scheme, you couldn't have one version supporting a range of KCPs, so it's already stupid. Thank you.
All right. At least he's not suggesting to do calendar versioning, so that's something. All right. Okay. So, any other input on this topic? Any other thoughts? All right, then thank you for the discussion and for talking me out of this. Then we don't have any topics here at the moment. I have one more, but I would like to give the opportunity. Is there any question or any topic or anything that you want to bring to the open floor part of this meeting? Okay, going once, going twice. Right, then you'll have to listen to another topic from me. There was a discussion on the newly minted KCP users Slack channel, and an observation that a user made was that the load balancing between front proxy and instances, so replicas of a shard, seem to be poorly distributed. And I think that's probably not that surprising. The user in question is trying out some things to basically disable keep alive in the front proxy. But I think the main challenge that we have is that we are simply pointing the front proxy to the Kubernetes service DNS name, at least when you deploy via the Helm chart. And I think there's no way to basically configure multiple endpoints. The question that I have is that sufficient for like a kind of like global front-facing proxy components that we want to roll out? And I would argue maybe But Stefan, you have a thought.
A question first.
Hmm?
So there are two parts of scheduling, and there is if you have an HA set up with multiple instances of the same shard. Which of the two are we talking about?
The same shard. So multiple replicas
shard.
of the same shard.
Okay. And why? I mean, if you think about global, this is about multiple shards. This is not the second topic.
No, you're right. You're right. I was more trying to say, okay, this is like the load balancing component that we plan to put in front of KCP.
Yeah.
Should it be smarter than doing the Kubernetes service endpoint, basically?
Another question: what is Kube doing in the aggregator? I think they resolve the service, so the endpoints, and then they do a random forwarding. So they have potentially multiple clients. We could do the same thing if we want to.
I think that would be one of the, I haven't, like, this just came up today. I haven't looked into this into much more depth, but I realized that pay proxy, should it maybe, like the resolving things, I like that. Maybe that's a good idea. So, and there was a question on the chat. Yeah, MJ, yeah, this is about the front proxy sending traffic to the KCP shards. Like, it seems that is not balancing traffic very well. We probably have to look at this in more depth. For GSP doing same +1. Yeah, okay. So if we can do this, and I guess we should be able to do this, maybe we should look into that. Okay, that seems like a good idea. I think we basically have this challenge of, well, we have a lot of long-running connections with watches. And apparently Kubernetes service endpoints are specifically not super good with that. So yeah, that was just a thought that I had. I wanted to see if anyone had opinions, and I think Stefan, you said the aggregation layer is doing this, right?
Kube aggregator, yeah. And I think there's even a flag where you can configure it, but I think by default it's endpoint based. And there might be dragons about health checking. I don't remember. Like the aggregator does pings and takes endpoints offline, I think, which endpoints themselves should also do, right? So if the endpoint, the backend goes unready, could go away. But anyway, there is complexity in this direction.
Yeah. I mean, load balancing is complex. That's why I had a lot of crazy thoughts. Like, what if we wrote an Envoy plugin instead, and basically let the hard part of load balancing handle some solution that can do it, but that's probably not attainable. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Can we create a backlog ticket to investigate this?
Yes, I had it like already open before, and then I didn't click on sending. I will write something down.
Cool.
All right. All right. Okay. And do we have any other topics to discuss? Going once, going twice, and sold. So thank you very much for attending, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. With that, have a great afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, and hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.